Shut up and sit down.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kane, the Superfats Snooker, and I'm here with my main man, the Faded Saint, and we're here to bring you our very first inaugural introduction to Off the Ropes. And we're here to talk to you about something that is exquisite to our nature here. Me and the Faded Saint, which I will introduce to you in a few seconds, is going to bring to you some stuff that is more than just natural talent of the WWE Universe, but just wrestling in general and how we should see it going into the very future of today's sports entertainment. Like I said, I am Kane Snooker, and this is my man, the Faded Saint. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Kane.
Cool beans. All right, in this case, my man here, I want to go ahead and let us talk about what we are as a people. So I'm going to let the Faded Saint let everyone know how we got to this point, why we're making this podcast, and especially who is the Faded Saint. So please, give us a little bit about yourself.
Alrighty. Well, Kane and I know each other from work, and we have very spirited wrestling discussions on our breaks. So that's how we came up with the idea. Hey, we should put this on audio and throw it out there to the masses. See who likes it, see who agrees with us, see who disagrees with us. My wrestling background is that I've been a fan of professional wrestling since I was 6 years old. I am now 36, so that is 30 years, and no, I'm not old. I am a Highlander, and I will live forever. I've watched WCW, I've watched WWE, I'm an old school ECW fan, and I actually had a cup of coffee in the industry itself for about 3 months, right until a cheese grater went across my forehead, and I was done. But I love wrestling, I love absolutely everything about it, and even though I know it's cheesy, it's how I entertain myself. And let's find out a little bit more about my lovely co-host here. Kane, tell them about yourself.
Let me tell you something, Faded Saint. When it comes to me and how I do things, you're looking at the four-time IWA Tag Team Champions. Now, I know you guys may not know who that is or where it is, but I'm coming from a little waterhole called Staten Island, New York, home of the great movies like Goodfellas and Rodney Dangerfield's Easy Money, if you've ever seen that. But I can tell you this much, IWA, which stands for Island Wrestling Association, back then when I was 16, between that and 18, I used to wrestle for them. And on our CTV channel, which is our community TV channel, we actually rocked the wrestling situation there. And I can tell you this much, when it comes to that, I loved it. And after that 3 years, I moved on with college and things like that, and I just started to get away, but I never kept an eye off of wrestling. And I can tell you this much, when we talk about the WWE Universe and whatever wrestling topics we're going to hit this following podcast, it's going to come from the mindset of someone who's not only been wrestling, but knows what wrestling's all about. So I'm looking forward to our topics today there, Sate.
All right, so we'll go ahead, and we're going to start right off with topic one, and that is the tag team division. Now, the reason why we're starting with this particular topic is this is pretty much what kicked off the idea of doing this. Both Kate and I have really divergent opinions of the tag team division past, although I think we both agree that the tag team division in its current incarnation is pretty much in shambles. But we were talking about, how, pretty much the belts are just there for two people who are just pasted together, unless you're, the brothers like Usos or the Dust Brothers. Pretty much you're not a tag team, you're just kind of, hey, you, come on in. But that leaves way to the tag team division of past. And we both do not agree on the tag team division of past. I, in particular, think that the tag teams of past, even before the heyday of the Hardys, the Dudleys, ENC, was a great tag team division, even post then. It's really only in the last 3 years that the tag team division has really gotten really bad, and those belts are really not even worth the leather that stitches them together.
I would have to say the same thing there. As far as it goes here, Saint, I thought we were talking about this tag team match discussion for the belts because you have a 4-time IWA Tag Team Champion in front of you here to talk about this, but I digress. As far as it goes when it comes to the tag team era, I have a little bit of an opinion different than the Saint here. I think that for the last decade, a lot of the gimmicks of the belt has been swayed in a way that doesn't make so much sense to me to enjoy, back where even when he was watching wrestling when he was 6 years old, where you got the Four Horsemen like Arn Anderson defending the tag team champions against my man Dusty Rhodes. And I feel like those days are a lot more epic in the sense of a tag team championship than today's modern thing. But I have to say, though, the one thing I like about today's tag team championships is the Usos. Those guys really know how to sell a performance.
Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. But the problem is that they have nobody to go up against. Absolutely nobody. I mean, if you just look back, it's pretty much their title reign has followed the same formula for the last 2 years. They win the titles, they feud with someone, they may or may not drop the belts, rematch, get the belts back, move on to the next one. That's what they did with the Wyatts, where for reasons that are beyond me, I do not understand why they never put the straps on Harper and Rowan, because if you go back and look at those matches that they had with them, those were absolutely phenomenal.
Well, that was easy, because the belts would stink afterwards. That's obvious.
Well, from that standpoint, yeah, because Lord knows, I don't think Harper washes that tank top that he wears. But regardless of the fact is that, you know, they played that out so much, and then the Usos just kind of won out that series without the Wyatts really, and I think that honestly just led to their demise as a unit, because nobody took Rowan and Harper as a tag team seriously. They kept losing to the Usos. And then they did the same thing with the Dust Brothers, where they traded the belts back and forth, but ultimately the Usos got it back and kind of shuffled them along. I know there was a tag team in between there. Oh, no, the last tag team, which was The Miz and Mizdow, which took the tag team belts, played around with it, then they got it back, and they've been shuffled off, and now we're going through the same thing with the current tag team that's up against them. Who is the current tag team that's up against them?
That would be Mr. Tyson Kidd and Cesaro,
That's
which
right.
is another promising tag team. I'll tell you this much. From a tag team champion's point of view, with the Usos and Tyson Kidd and Cesaro, and I'm thinking this is what's going to happen in Mania. I don't like to read much scripts online, so I like to try to focus on what you see through the entertainment point of view. This kind of scenario that's going to happen right now between them is probably going to be the best pickup you haven't seen in a while. And the issue with me and tag teams is the fact that these guys don't have that volume, with the exception of the Usos, because they have the gimmick, they have the performance. They just need to work on just one thing for me, and that is a tag team move. See, I feel like that is what's missing. Now, back in my day, when we did a tag team match, you did not see one match between me and my partner in crime, which was known as Big Daddy Brush. He and I used to do a lift bomb, which we call the destructing spot. And I can tell you this much: if they can do something like that with the 3D or even the concerto or something, I feel like they're going to make a big difference in the sense of what a tag team match should be when it comes to tag team partners.
But again, that's the problem. Nobody takes the tag team division serious enough to do just that. I mean, you have the Usos, they have that double splash, which is awesome. But, you know, long since the days are gone from the Demolition Driver and the Heart Attack and the Doomsday Device and the 3D even. That, and I also take umbrage that pretty much this tag team match has been brought to you by WWE Total Divas. Because that's what has pretty much just... That's pretty much what drives that match, was whatever was going on. And that's also what goes on with the Diva division, but we'll get to that in a bit. But, I mean, there's no real... You have the Ascension now, but I'm kind of depressed at what they're doing with the Ascension, because it's like they've turned them into the LOD Light. It's hard to watch.
I don't know about this now. And the only thing I don't like about the Ascension is their promo cuts. Because I can tell you this much, when you got to sell, you need to sell. And I can tell you this, right now their gimmick is not selling to me. The only thing I like about them right now is their music and how they're coming out. But that's about it. They need to sell themselves a lot more or a lot less. Don't get up on the promo cuts and start talking like you know what you're talking about and then get beat by the what is that, the light that was on last time? The Way? Who were them that they just really rest up with on Raw that night? They had a match against
the Primetime Players, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, not even better. That was the Primetime Players. Even worse. They lost to the Primetime Players. Wow, I need to get my information straight. Jackie! Make sure you get my straight! Sorry, that was my assistant, Jackie.
Ah, gotcha. Well, you know, again, the Primetime Players is another example. They were a tag team. They went their separate ways. Didn't work, so let's make them a tag team again. Because they never did anything with Titus O'Neil, and Darren Young got injured and just came back. So, again, just another example of the tag team division just being just kind of like it's the cruiserweight division, actually. Is what it is. It's become the cruiserweight division.
And that's not saying much, because even if you go back around 8 years ago, there was no cruiserweight division either, and that says a lot too, because that was when the belt was around. You know, I don't get what's going on here today, but I can tell you this much: when it comes to how everything goes, tag team wise, it is definitely a missing art in the WWE right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, I mean, it's missing art from wrestling in general. You don't see a whole lot of emphasis on tag team wrestling in the mainstream. I mean, even NXT, they have some good tag teams over there, gimmicks notwithstanding, you know, because the vaudevillian villains, I roll my eyes at that, but the two guys are really great wrestlers.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. The vaudevillains, that is one of my ultimate favorite wrestling tag teams in NXT right now, because of the fact that they are willing to be that gimmick and still work well as a tag team. So I give them more straight applause.
Oh no, they play it up to the hilt, and that's what you have to do with it, you know. But you know who the Ascension really need to get as their manager? Somebody who can teach them how to completely just take the gimmick and live it 24/7. Mm-hmm. They need Disco Inferno.
You gotta explain that to me now, brother, because I have no idea what you mean by that.
Well, Disco Inferno, apparently he's done that. He did that gimmick well before he was in WCW, and Disco, from all accounts of what everyone has had to say about him, is that he lived that gimmick 24/7. And despite the fact that nobody liked him backstage, he was more over than everyone. They kept giving him time. They kept giving him, you know, the crowd would cheer for him. They would bring signs, even though he wasn't necessarily yeah, he was like Miz before there was a Miz, but he was over. They would always give him time. He was hilarious. He was fun to watch, and it was because he believed his gimmick. He believed he was the Disco Inferno. He dressed it. He acted it. He spoke it. It was just he was it, and that's what made it work for him. And
I thought I was crazy thinking of things like that. You might as well bring Rico back and have him the tag team champions.
I will point out, as I did when you brought that up during break, that Rico Constantino was a finalist on American Gladiators. He is a firefighter as well. That's what he does for a living now. So, you know, that's a testament to him that he pulled off that gimmick. So,
in this case, either way, there's been very few champions worth mentioning as tag team champions in the last 10 years, and they are of the bad ones. I have probably give you a gigantic list of who were our former tag team champions. To me, you very rarely do that to the WWE Championship belt itself. You know, once in a while you get somebody through the cracks that gets the belt. We don't want to remember the good old-fashioned era of WCW awarding their WCW Championship to a certain specific actor that we shall leave nameless at this time, after a certain bombed movie that happened in WCW at that certain time.
Have you ever seen that movie?
I think I was referring to that movie in the context that I know and saw, the horrendousness of it. As I don't want to get too off topic with the tag team topic we're on here, but I just want to point out that that is the example of how I feel these days with that tag team championship matches. Is they're just awarding it to whoever wants to team up and say, "Hey, I need a belt. Hey, I need a belt. Let's put these together, and I'll give you belts." Because nobody's going to get that WWE Championship these days when it comes to those tag team partners that you see in the rings.
No, it takes an act of God to get the to get the WWE Heavyweight title. But that also segues very nicely because our second topic is about title belts and talking about I need a belt, I need a belt. That's pretty much what every title in the WWE is these days. I mean, let's face it, the U.S. title has been defended. Before Rusev got it, it was defended very, very seldomly. Like, occasionally Sheamus would come out and defend the belt, and then before that, Dean Ambrose had it, and Dean Ambrose, as he was a part of the Shield and working for the Authority at the time, I think he defended it a grand total of, like, 12 times in 200 and something days. Like, it was just like a prop. It was literally just there. Which I don't get why we have the U.S. belt anymore. We don't have the brand extensions. You know, it made sense when they were when Raw and SmackDown were separate brands to have their own primary title, secondary title, tag team title, women's title. But now it's just kind of there, and it doesn't bring anything to Rusev because Rusev was all because if you notice in the last pay-per-view, even though it was a title match. It was kind of like the title wasn't even there. It was like, I'm going to be the first one to beat Rusev. Well, no, you're not. Rusev has been disqualified, John Cena.
I was just thinking just about that too, Saint. When it comes to what you just said right there, I kind of felt like, hey, here's John Cena. He beat Rusev. Oh, here's a belt with it. Enjoy. It was like the fries with the side of the Big Mac right there.
It's like he was diving into the Cracker Jacks. Like, oh, match with Rusev. Oh, what do you know? Here's the U.S. belt. I swear, I was having flashes of, you know, back in the old days of WCW, remembering, you know, Jim Duggan doing this horrible, I'll do anything to keep my job, and they made him a janitor, and he found the television title just hanging out in the trash can because Scott Hall had thrown it away, and that's how he became the television champion.
Well, let's if we're gonna do in memoriams here of belts that used to exist, now I can tell you this much: we could keep the television championship in the trash all day, because when it comes to belts like that, that is a different story. Now, to recap on something, let's just look at the topic of the belts, and that is who possesses that U.S. belt, and that's Rusev right now. I have to tell you, when it comes to Rusev, he is a really good wrestler, regardless of that gimmick he's got going on. I've known people that had that anti-American gimmick, and they bomb. But this guy really knows how to sell his anger, and that manager of hers, whoo-wee, I can tell you this much, just having her around is even 10 times worth the match, no matter who he versus. And I can tell you, even if it's WCW, Intercontinental, even that Tag Team Championship belt that we've been just talking about, if he's wearing it, I'm watching it.
Well, but again, if he's wearing it, you're watching it, but the belt doesn't bring anything to him. It's just a thing that he has. It's not like, oh, we've got to get which is what a title belt should be. I mean, at least in the tag team division, they make a big deal about the belts, even though it's kind of like, hey, Tyson Kidd, we've never talked before, but we should get the tag team titles. Whereas you almost forget in matches that Rusev is the U.S. title. I mean, he carries it out, he wears it, he gives it over to Lana, who, by the way, is Stephanie McMahon, like, from back in the Attitude Era. She's got Stephanie voice like nobody's business. But, I mean, it doesn't do anything for Rusev. It didn't do anything for Sheamus before him. It didn't do anything for Dean Ambrose before him. You know, it's really just kind of a pointless belt. And again, the way they brought up the match that just happened this past Sunday on the pay-per-view, you know, with him and John Cena. If you didn't read the little title card, you would have probably never known that there was it was a U.S. title belt, because they didn't bill that I'm bringing the U.S. title home. You know, they could have done so much with that, because the U.S. title was the first title that John Cena held. And, you know, He could have made a big deal about, this was the first belt that I had ever had when I became to this company, and this belt is special to me. This was the first belt I ruined by turning it into a spinner, and, but nothing. It was just, no, I'm going to be the first guy that beats you. That was the focus of the match. And they really need to just combine it with the Intercontinental title, or they just need to drop it altogether. But,
see, I have to say, that's probably the biggest thing. I got to agree with you there, Saint. When it comes to what you're talking about right now and how it goes, I could tell you this much. You're exactly on the money, because that U.S. belt wasn't even in the topic or even the glimpse of John Cena's eye. That was like the cream on the top of the already delicious cake that he's biting into, which is fighting Rusev. Because when you look at, like, for example, Daniel Bryan, or are we looking at right now the current and mainstream man for the WWE Championship here, Roman Reigns, they don't talk as much about the person they're fighting more than about the desire to get that belt around their waist. It is a big difference between the WWE Championship belt than any other belts that ever exist in the WWE Universe right now.
Which is right, and that's the way it should be. The belt should be a big deal. The belt should be...
Preach it!
Exactly. The belt should be something that you aspire to.
The Saints are marching in here, Saint.
The U.S. title was like Harley Race's title back in the day. Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, all of those people had the U.S. title. That's primarily a WCW title, which is probably why they don't pay attention to it. But then we get to the subject of the Intercontinental title, which is like the kiss of death, because I don't have facts, like figures in front of me to support this, but I swear to God, the last 3 Intercontinental title holders, which, let's see, right now it's Bad News Barrett, and then before that it was Dolph Ziggler, and then before that, who was it before that? Was it Miz before that? It was somebody before that.
I think it was definitely the Miz when it comes to long-term.
But, I mean, it's pretty much they won the belt, and then they just went through a series of losing and losing and losing over and over and over again, until they finally lost the belt. And so it's like you get the Intercontinental belt, and you have an okay 15-minute match, but the champion's probably going to lose to set up for the match of the pay-per-view. It's almost like clockwork at this point.
The only thing I have to say, though, I get the idea of why you came from that, but coming from a champion's point of view, I could say getting that Intercontinental champion may not be as resourceful as it was back in the day, where if you had that belt, you were pretty much going to be the next guy going for the world belt. But I'll tell you this, it has boosted the superstardom of whoever owns that belt. I mean, look at the Miz here. Look at Dolph Ziggler. Remember when he was a cheerleader? Oh my God! When he was a cheerleader,
remember when he was a caddy?
It doesn't even matter who he was, but I can tell you this much: either way, when he had the Intercontinental belt and he became that champion, and then afterwards he lost it. Now these days, he is the most rooted superstar in the WWE ring when it comes to fighting matches. I could tell you, whoever has the Intercontinental belt, regardless of how it is now when it comes to trying to even getting the WWE Championship, you're going to at least get some ratings from the fans afterwards.
I will point out that 2 of those guys that you just mentioned were WWE champions before they were Intercontinental champions. Or they were WWE champions and then became Intercontinental champions. So it kind of went in this weird reverse.
I'll give you that. The Miz is definitely a champion before Intercontinental. I'll give you that. But then again, I put Miz in that same category as I talked about with our mystery celebrity who won that WCW championship back then, too.
Well, Miz worked his ass off to become a professional wrestler, and a lot of people, have kind of always seen him as that road rules, real world, reality guy. Which is unfortunate because he's a decent wrestler. He is great for generating heat. But again, did the Intercontinental Championship really bring anything to Miz the last time he had it? He was already a former world champion. Hell, he won WrestleMania against John Cena. He was really kind of established there, so having the Intercontinental title didn't really do anything. Miz is not really your workhorse kind of deal like Dolph Ziggler is and Bad News Barrett are, so I can understand because the Intercontinental Champion was always, back in the day, was the workhorse belt. Ricky Steamboat had that belt. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart.
let's look at real quick why I say The Miz might be someone who put in that category of the mystery celebrity we have today. Remember, he all started his first career point in MTV's Real World. All right, so let's look at that for a minute there and realize that The Miz is an entertainer. That is all I consider him at this point. I actually would like to compare him to Daniel Bryan and how he fast-tracked his career to his championship back at WrestleMania 30. I give him more merit than I would The Miz earning a belt.
Oh, I would too. Daniel Bryan is hands and above the better wrestler.
And also the more spirited in the sense of what we want in a wrestler.
Exactly. Well, and you see that with the fans. The fans have all just taken him in and made him our own in a sense. Trust me, when you go to Raw, I had the privilege of going to Raw a month ago when it was down here in New Orleans, and you're in that crowd with the yes chant. Yeah, that's a whole experience, because it doesn't matter whether you like him or you hate him. When that yes chant starts, you get involved into it. So, but yeah, absolutely, Daniel Bryan as a wrestler. I don't think it's fair to say that Miz is a mystery celebrity guest wrestler because he's been doing the wrestling for so long at this point. I think I don't think I want to. I don't think he's a current situation like that. I'm talking about when he was champion. He puts himself in the status in my mind as someone who earned a belt like the mystery celebrity we were talking about. Oh no, that's definitely his gimmick, the Hollywood A-lister, which the Marine 4 comes out this week, I believe.
Oh, it's not promo now.
The Marine 4 with Mike the Miz and Summer Rae. I didn't know Summer Rae was in it until I saw an advertisement for it.
I might just see it now.
Yeah,
Summer Rae now.
But that'll come up with the Divas division. But I mean, just in general, my point is that unless it's the world title belt, they really don't put a whole lot of thought into what goes on behind it.
The irony behind that too, though, is The Miz was also a tag team champion, just like we were talking about, and he was with him and I believe that guy from Eminem, the other one, not the one that's
John Morrison.
Yep.
Yeah. Morrison's a great wrestler. And Morrison carried that team wrestling-wise, but, Miz carried that, and they did a lot of entertaining stuff. They may not have been, one of the all-time greatest tag teams in the world, but what they was very entertaining. They did a video segment on WWE.com back when WWE.com didn't have anything going for it. So, I mean, you can sit there and you can say how gimmicky they were, but they were actually pretty successful tag team. Not like Head Cheese, which for those of you who don't know was Al Snow and Steve Blackman.
I'm not smelling that one pretty well when it comes to that tag team matches we were talking about there. But back to what we are talking about involving belts.
Right.
We need to make them more specific. So, writing done right now, in this case, I just want to get into a segment of here of what should be written. And I'll tell you this much, if you, the WWE Universe, and Mr. McMahon, and the family of the WWE Network, who is, if we, in the grace of God, have one of them listen to our podcast today, or whenever they're going to listen to it, hear us out right now. Make those belts worth something. Do not just give it to somebody so they can have a pay increase and they can have just idle matches as versus what is worth the belt for. Because I can tell you this much, that Intercontinental belt was worn a lot better on anybody 10 years ago than it is worth today.
Yeah, that's absolutely the truth. But then again, they put a lot more thought into the Intercontinental belt 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, if writing's done right, what you do is you have a unification match sometime soon, probably WrestleMania, U.S. belt, IC belt, and then you make a big deal about both lineages, and being the one lineage now, because that's never been done before. Unlike when for the first time ever back at Survivor Series, there'll be one Survivor Series 2 years ago, where for the first time ever they'll be combining the World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE Championship in a unification match. And everyone was going, didn't Chris Jericho do that? Like like 15 years ago against Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock in the same night.
Oh yeah, we know that
Yeah,
belt,
yeah,
and
exactly.
that was actually a beautiful belt, by the way. If we look at now, if this topic is about belts also and how they looked, that was a nice belt. That
Yes,
undisputed WWE Championship belt that existed back then.
Yeah, before John Cena ruined it with the spinner belt.
Mhm.
John Cena ruins a lot of belts. Thank God.
Even worse is that they kept it afterwards. That was the
Ex-
hard part.
Oh God! I mean, like the U.S. belt, which was the spinner belt, he ruined that one. I don't think he ever.
I gave a little. I was okay with that one a little bit. It made sense during that gimmicky time, and they, but the only thing I
It looks so
respected.
horrible.
But here's the thing, though. Now, Saint, is that they brought it back after Cena was done. They didn't do that with that belt. They left it. They
left it for
made the
years.
rated R afterwards with Edge, and they brought it back without the spinning part in the middle afterwards. I'm actually happy with the belt they have now. I know it's not as pretty as the World Heavyweight Championship, which was my
big gold
WCW back then. That was a pretty belt, but it ain't as pretty as that one. But I can tell you, it's a lot better than that spinner belt.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, with that, this would be a good point where we can get a little bit of an ad break, where I'd probably find some fake ad to put or right in here, or play some Jonathan Coltrane, because that's nice Creative Commons. So we will be back with yet another topic and why you should be watching NXT. Hey, this is your boy, the Faded Saint, and on behalf of Kane and myself, we'd like to thank Bin Sound for our opening and closing theme. And rather than an ad, we are going to play you a WWE theme mashup. This one is by byRavenCyarm. It is Rhino and the Dudley Boys. We've had enough gore.
We had enough of the what you coulda, the what you woulda, the what you shoulda done to avoid the unbeatable dance and undefeatable too. We had enough of the what you coulda, the what you woulda, the what you shoulda done to avoid the unbeatable dance and undefeatable too. We had enough. And we're prepared for war, prepared for the toe-to-toe, so let's go. Prepared for the head-to-head, enough said. We about to put these little punks to bed. One slap, kick ass, fucking clap for. These little punks ain't ready for war. These little hookers ain't ready to ride, and it's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Lights out, one tag, two tag, kaboom. Let them feel a pain, don't count them out too soon. Let them hit the mat and pick them up on two. Suffer, pain, hurt, you're through, over, done. Body count tally, last call, move on, 3 deep finale. Told you we coming to settle the score. The talking ends now, it's time for war. Of the what you coulda, the what you woulda, the what you shoulda done to avoid the unbeatable dance and undefeatable too. We had enough. Let's say no more. We came here to settle the score, so let's go. Tonight, all debts will be paid in full. All debt collectors won't correct it. It's been enough talk, it's been enough rest about which two-man team is the best. So listen now, see us here now. Don't care who you are, you're all going down. I'm fed up to here, don't doubt for real. Gonna do the job, gonna go for the kill. Trying to survive, let's say goodbye. Hardcore rules apply. So come on, come on, come on, do you hear us? Come on, come on, come on, are you with us? Hands in the air if you feel us, come on. Hands in the air if you feel us, come on. Catch me any part of town, running to the navel. Others got their eye on the cable. I step like, I walk like, I don't care. I might screw face your whole place, I have no fear. I live amongst wolves, set up shop in the den. I'll never lose my jewels and have to cop it again. They don't know the hell I've seen, where I've been. They'll never try me again. A lot of them, twice as tough. Like New York City, we ain't never giving up. And God given package, ass on women, hard like steel, tougher than thinner. There's no limit to how I live it. No amount of pressure can test my will. We're here to clean house, king of the hill. Trying to take us down with just one punch. Now they wonder why I made rubber throw them out. Next time, room folks up, come on, close your mouth. Now you're looking like New Jack, Fabby and sick, trying to play a hate on out. Yo, we had enough. Come on, say what you say. What you should have done to avoid the unbeatable dance and undefeatable too. We had enough of the what you coulda, the what you woulda, the what you should have done to avoid the unbeatable dance and undefeatable too. We had enough.
welcome back to Off the Ropes with Kane Snuka and the Faded Saint. I'm your boy, the Faded Saint. That is Kane Snuka. We are coming to you from parts unknown. Well, he's coming from parts unknown because this is over the internet. I am coming from the furthest reaches of your mind. Damien Demento is my next door neighbor. And
I found a few parts that were known, but that's not always the truth here. That's why it's always parts unknown.
Isn't that where the foreign object comes from? Parts unknown.
I know that we screened foreign object quite often here, but I don't know where exactly it goes.
It's about 30 miles west of Truth or Consequence, New Mexico, as I understand it.
Well, as long as we're that way and not the Mason-Dixon line, I'm good.
Exactly. Well, we have been discussing the tag team division and the state of title belts, and up next we are going to be discussing why you should be watching NXT. And, you know, that's actually a pretty simple question. It's very simply the best wrestling show that is out there right now.
Let me tell you something real quick, Saint. Let me tell you something real quick, and I know that this is one of your favorite topics to talk about because NXT has been very new to me myself, but it brings me back to my roots back when I was in IWA. It makes me feel like there's people out there that give a shit. I'll tell you this much. And when you watch NXT, for the crowd and for the people in the matches, they know how to show a boat.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I mean, I just don't... I do not get... And this is kind of the problem with TNA and why I don't watch TNA, is that they try so hard to be the WWE. I don't know if you keep up with TNA, but a little bit after Daniel Bryant won the title, they had their short, bearded underdog fan favorite win their title, and it was like, stop it, guys. Just, you guys have better wrestlers, be wrestlers. And then NXT, you know, came along. Well, NXT has really kind of always been there. It was tucked away on Sci-Fi in some really late-night kind of place.
Well, let's also look at the fact that TNA. No, I'm sorry. Are we talking about TNA or NXT now?
Yeah, we're talking about NXT.
Yeah, I was going to say NXT. Don't keep in mind that a lot of NXT's heritage would definitely come from Ohio wrestling.
Ohio Valley Wrestling. Actually, NXT was formerly Florida Championship Wrestling before they got the deal with Full Sail University, and they switched it over.
I gotta talk to Jackie again. Jackie! Stop giving me wrong, mate! Sorry about that now.
Oh, no worries. No worries. But, I mean, the point I was getting at is that NXT is, you know, without going into, like, your Ring of Honors and Strike Force and going over to the overseas, but as far as mainstream, NXT has got the best wrestling program that's out there. Not entertainment, but wrestling, because those kids can wrestle their asses off. And it's better than the wrestling that you see in TNA, which is a shame because their X division at one time was pretty damn great. It's better than what you see on WWE. I still don't understand how you can have a 3-hour Raw and relegate some of these matches to like 5-10 minute matches.
Yes, sir.
And you have to sit there, and you have to sit through, like, what is it? You have to sit through a 15-minute promo that you heard, and you have to sit through if you weren't paying attention earlier, this is what happens 6 times a show.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yes.
Not the case.
You know, do a recap at the middle of the show if you have to, but you don't have to keep telling us what happened. I was watching at the beginning of the show, guys.
Now, I can tell you this much, Shane. There's been a few of these NXT wrestlers, and I could say it's less than the fingers on my hand where I don't relate to them. But there are more than on my hands when it comes to fingers that I can relate to and how they have been doing marvelous work in NXT. We got, you know, even just the current #1 contender, Finn Balor, he is one of those guys that's going to go someplace. When they pick him up and put him in the WWE, I hope they make a game changer out of him. Because when it comes to what's going on right now in the WWE Universe, on SmackDown, on Raw, and even in the pay-per-views, they need someone like Finn Balor to really come in and say, hey, I'm going to tear shit up. And that even says for a lot of other people like Adrian Neville. I feel like he's ready right now, but who knows what's going on with NXT. All I can say this much right now about NXT, though, is Triple H, you did one hell of a job rebranding that.
Well, and that's the issue, is bringing him up to the main roster. I mean, it's very hit or miss, believe it or not. I mean, the Wyatts came from NXT, and they were a big hit. The Shield, although they weren't the Shield, they were three guys who were from NXT, who they brought up at the same time, and they were probably one of the most dominant factions of the last half decade. And then you have Emma. Exactly, nothing. And then you have Adam Rose, which has been just a god-awful failed experiment. I don't know. I don't know what their plan was with him, but obviously they didn't push it in any way. Then you have like Paige, who's like, their matches with AJ were great, and they show the problem is they always would stick their matches right in between the workhorse match and the main event match as the palate cleanser. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but I mean, Paige is a great character, and then you have, the current one that just came up was the Ascension, and it's just like, yay.
Man, don't even get me on that now. As far as it goes when it comes to NXT, though, I'm really hoping they do some game changes with the single wrestlers, though, because even though the more common ones that are coming up are the tag teams and also the women's division, mostly because they need it so bad right now, Saint. They need it bad more than they need people in the mainstream wrestling matches. I mean, they got Dean Ambrose, they got people like Bad News Barrett, they got Daniel Bryan, they got Roman Reigns. A lot of these guys right now are doing so good on their own in the big part of the WWE universe. It's very hard to have people like Finn Balor and all the other people that are in there right now in NXT to push up more than those guys, because they really need to soak up the other side of the fence. But we can't do anything about it right now. All I could say is that when they do, please, WWE Universe, if anyone's listening from our side of the fence, please, make them a game-changing situation. Make them the next Daniel Bryan. Make them wrestle. Do not make them just haterade all over the place like The Miz. Don't make them go nuts with gimmicks like the Ascension. Just go hardcore with them and give them some good matches and good gimmicks to people to go, holy crap, I gotta watch this guy.
Well, that's the perfect world scenario, but unfortunately, I don't have a lot of hope for that. If the WWE is smart, what they would do is they would start cycling out people on their undercard, people like your primetime players, and I was going to say Justin Gabriel, but Justin Gabriel left right before the Rumble.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me ask you a question. Like every once in a while, you see a transition guy. For example, in the Rumble, we had Kurt Hennig's son. I forgot his name now.
Curtis Axel.
There we go. Now, my man, he was going to go into the Rumble. He was the only one that I know from NXT that was going to jump on there. I guess they used him so that way they can, make, my man over there, Eric Rowan's on there, go into the match. But who knows what he could have really done. I thought maybe he was a good transition for that. Now, Shane, I know you know this answer because I'm more of the glitz and glamour, prime time watching shows of the WWE Universe, but dark match-wise, does NXT join up with the WWE?
In some events. In some events they do. Like when they did WrestleMania down here last year, and they had like the 4-day-long fan extravaganza, they had the NXT people like wrestling matches right in the convention center. You'd walk by and you'd see like CJ Parker and Adrian Neville. Again, Adrian Neville, as I was saying before, he's really done really well for himself since leaving the Shire.
Yes.
I say that because my best friend says that he looks like an elf, and I'm like, nah, he's not tall enough to be an elf.
He's got a face only a mama can love, I'll give you that. But when it comes to anything, we're going to stare down that man's beautiful mug. We're going to look at him. I consider him an orc that's on antibiotics.
Something like that. I don't think he's big enough to be an orc. Maybe a goblin.
Maybe goblin.
Maybe a very well worked out hobbit. I'm thinking.
No, I think goblin works perfectly with that big ear, long forehead kind of look. But that don't mean that man's matches in the ring don't make any difference about his face.
His matches are pretty. Pretty. That red arrow move is very nice. But that's probably why he hasn't been called up, because something like that, high flyers don't tend to do very well, except in the tag team division.
That is very true. A lot of top rope don't work so well anymore. I mean, the last real mainstream guy like that was Mysterio.
Right, and Mysterio is sitting at home refusing to do the rest of his contract because they forced him into an extra year because of an injury clause. So, yeah, Mysterio's doing nothing right now. He hasn't even been cashing his checks because he's trying to, because as I understand it, he's trying to invoke legal action to get out of his contract because he's getting up there. He wants to go finish out his the rest of his career down in Mexico where he's practically a god. But
pretty much.
But I mean, NXT, I can see why a lot of the guys are just kind of stuck there because I don't see them doing very well once they get to the big stage because they're not going to get that 15 to 30 minute match to just tear it up. They're not going to get they're not going to get all of the attention put on them. They just very very quickly become the small pond. And again, look at the Ascension. What they were doing is pretty much what they were doing in NXT. A little bit less mic time, and their matches are much shorter. But once you try and translate that up to the big stage, it doesn't work. Especially since you've got other tag teams, and I don't know anyone who was clamoring for the return of the Primetime Players Ascension feud to happen. Not me. I'd love to see the Ascension versus the Dudleys. I know the Dudleys are free and not under contract to TNA right now. That might be a really cool match to see.
We did see Bubba join us at the Royal Rumble for a little bit. Who knows? He even had an interview recently. I remember reading an article like that. And I don't read much because, I'm all about the primetime watching more than anything. I like to see the moves. I like to see the shakes. But I can tell you this much. I took a look at that article. And I could say that with full fruition, he even said it, that if the WWE Universe wants to see him and Devon come back, they'll let the WWE Network know. They'll let him know. And I can tell you this much, if that's the case, start waving it in. Bring in the Saints, I can tell you this much there. Because when it comes to that faded, anybody is worth watching, it's going to be the Dudley Boys. Especially with this whole Ascension thing. It's like RKO back in the day when he was doing legend killing. Well, time to do some legend killing on some tag team legends. And I can tell you this much, 3D will bring them to Dudleyville 100%.
Absolutely. But then, that's what the tag team division needs. They need one of those old school tag teams to come back, like the New Age Outlaws did for 3 years ago. And trust me, when the New Age Outlaws came back, the tag team division was interesting for about 3 months, and then they went away because they're not really the New Age Outlaws anymore. They're the Old Age Outlaws. Now, I will say one more thing about NXT, and this will serve as a segue over to our next and last topic for the evening, is that another reason why I don't hold out much hope for people coming up from from NXT to the main roster is because of Charlotte Flair. Now, Charlotte Flair, the daughter of Nature Boy Ric Flair, had a wonderful, had a stellar match with Natty Neidhart, Natalia. I want to say something like half a year ago. It was one of the very first NXT takeovers, and they went like 30 minutes, and it was as good, if not better, than what some of the boys were doing. And it was a phenomenal match. If you have the WWE Network, go look it up. It's really worth the watch. They then recently, I want to say it was right before the Rumble, right before not this takeover. It was the last takeover. So about
Revolution.
Right before our Evolution. So 2 months ago, they had a match on Raw. This match was less than 10 minutes and was pretty much the stalest, most flaccid thing you've ever seen. It was just horrible. And
worse than my grandpa?
What's that?
Worse than my grandpa?
A hell of a lot worse.
Oh,
it was worse than the Jeff Hardy Sting main event for Victory Road 3 years ago.
I gotta make sure Pappy Snooker don't hear this then.
But let me tell you. But then again, you can always chalk that up to being the Divas division, which is so depressing. I don't even know why they have it at this point, because the Divas division is just basically the total Divas division, because that's what dictates the entire division. It doesn't matter that you've got like Naomi and Natty Neidhart, and you've got people like Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair who are down in the indies.
Blue pants.
Da 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 da. But for the women's division is primarily made up of models these days, and some of them are actually decent wrestlers. Nikki Bella, Brie Bella, a little bit more so. Some of the other females there, Paige and AJ, are shining examples because they can put on a great match if you give them the time to do it. But again, long are the days since we had Trish Stratus and Lita in a steel cage main eventing Raw.
I have to say, that is probably a good example of what's going on with the WWE Universe when it comes to Divas and the women's divisions. Now, I say that because there are the Divas, which is what we see mostly on Raw and SmackDown, and then we see these fantastic women's division in NXT. And I got to say this much. I don't want to see gimmick matches. Steel cage, you can leave that with the Attitude Era. You can leave that with the Ruthless Aggression Era with Trish and Lita. But you got to tell you this much. I will rather watch the fabulous Charlotte Flair versus even Bayley these days in NXT than any match, even with Paige in it, because Paige is probably one of the more promising wrestlers right now in the Diva universe of the WWE SmackDown Raw stars. And I can tell you this much, even with that, nobody's beaten these women in NXT more than NXT wrestling matches.
No, they're not. Although I will say that, man, have you seen that PTO submission that Paige does?
That is ridiculously.
Ow.
Oh my God! I wish I knew what she knew back in my day. Because if that ever happened, I probably would be in the WWE right now, rocking that WWE Championship more than everything.
That looks painful. But I mean, that has been since the Attitude Era. That's kind of been the modus operandi of the WWE as far as their divas. They had like women's wrestlers for the longest time, and then they didn't have it after the whole Medusa throwing the women's belt in the garbage can on Nitro. And then they kind of slowly brought it back, and then you had your Litas, you had your Trish Stratuses, you had your Molly Hollies and Ivorys and such, and Victorias, who were really good wrestlers. Gail Kim, Mickie James. And that was a really strong division. And, you can sit there and you can say, let's leave the steel cage gimmicks at home. That was a big deal for the time.
Well, let's look at the trend history right now. The irony behind you mentioning Mickie James is she's on TNA. Right now, that's what she's doing. I feel, and this is kind of looking at history-wise, back then when WCW came out, they were pulling people from the WWF, back then when it was called the WWF, left and right, because they were getting all these veterans coming over to WCW so they can get their ratings. That is what's happening right now in TNA. They're getting the veterans of the women's universe coming over there and fighting for them. And Mickie James is one hell of a wrestler. She'll never be in the Hall of Fame, but I can tell you this much. She is doing well in the TNA world. And that is an interesting situation to see in, the fact that everyone's swapping each other like this in the TNA world. And then you go back to the WWE Universe, and you're seeing these young, new girls, and they're not doing as well as the ones that are even waiting in the rafters as NXT is.
Well, yeah, TNA has always had a good women's division. Not so much in recent years. When I did watch it, they had a really good women's division. But to the point I was saying is the Trish Stratus Lita cage match that headlined Raw. Can you think of another Divas match or women's match that ever headlined Raw? Ever?
Well, no, that's the whole big deal. They were the
Right.
first and only.
They were the first and only. And then you've kind of got into your Tori Wilsons and your Stacy Keeblers, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're gorgeous ladies, and when you put them in the gimmicky evening gown matches, bra and panty matches, and stuff like that, that was their niche and their wheelhouse. But when you ask them to wrestle a match and for a title, no, just no. And then
Daniel Bryan style, no.
Exactly.
No.
But, and that's where how we've gotten to today, where most of the women, quote-unquote, wrestlers are not really wrestlers. They're really kind of models who kind of are athletic and could probably be great wrestlers, but, I mean, and I could be wrong, but then again, they don't give them the time to make any kind of a match, so I can't actually make an educated, assertion as to how good or bad any of these divas are. But, to kind of illustrate this point, is this apparently has been a thing. This was actually a hashtag campaign that people were hashtagging at the WWE, Give Divas a Chance. And as recently as yesterday, both WWE and Triple H on their Twitter accounts said, throughout the hashtag and said, "We hear you, it's coming." So who knows? Maybe we might be looking at a resurgence of the women's division, because the Divas division is garbage. The women's division is what it should be.
I give you that. But the thing is, now here's the formula that we got to watch out for. How do we make it so that way the boys, because that's the big problem with most of the reason why the women's championship matches were never so fruitful, is how we're going to make the boys feel like it's an acceptable scenario when they're in those matches in SmackDown and also on Raw, because that's going to be the issue here. How are they going to have a few matches for the women and be really good and then have that kind of stamina and proactive use when the next match may be something that's just going to drown that out? So that's the formula they got to figure out.
They've definitely got to take the women's matches and get them off of palate cleanser status, because that just kills the entire division.
And you know what? Take that Divas belt and throw in the garbage and bring back the women's belt.
Exactly. I hate the Divas belt. It just
looks like a big butterfly.
It looks like an old Intercontinental belt that somebody bedazzled.
Even worse, it looks like a big butterfly to me.
No, that's what it's supposed to be.
I don't like it.
So you're right. No, me neither. I like the old school gold women's belt. Make it look like a real title belt, guys. Make it look like a real title belt. You don't sit there and take the U.S. belt and turn it into a great big spinning flat. Oh wait, John Cena.
You know what you gotta do? Make a smaller version of the WWE belt.
Yeah, exactly.
Make a women's something. Something like that.
Bring back the old $1 million belt. That'll work. That's nice and pretty.
All right, now we're going back to that last topic with belts that make no sense now.
Well, the $1 million belt
the European belt back in here.
The $1 million belt was never meant to be a serious belt. That was strictly a prop.
Yeah, you can say that about the European belt.
Yep, which was also found in the garbage by Mideon, and that's how he became champion. He just found it because Shane McMahon threw it away. A lot of that going on. I didn't know that was a legal version of title change. But another topic for another time. That is our time, folks. We want to thank everyone for listening. Go ahead and hit me up if you have any comments, have any questions. Hit me up on the Twitter at FatedSaint, on the Tumblr, fatedsaint.tumblr.com. Kane, do you have any information to throw out there if they want to hit you up?
No, they could actually hook you up as much as they can to hook me up. Because right now, when it comes to how I am, I like to stay in the parts unknown. Because when it comes to how I deal with the world today, there is no way that Kane, the super fat Snooker, and all the Snooker family, that Pappy Snooker, is going to deal with the Twitter universe. But I can tell you this much, as far as this podcast goes, you let Mr. Faded Saint know what we like to talk about, because if you want us to talk about something you like to hear, we sure might have something to say about it.
Alrighty, well, thank you very much. That's Kane Snooker. I'm the Faded Saint, and we'll see you down in the next town. Hey, this is your boy, the Faded Saint, and on behalf of Kane and myself, we would like to thank Ben Sound for our opening and closing. No, kitty. No. You're in my mic.